hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is CeeLo Green, and you are now tuned in to Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. He is not famous at all. Check out this new streaming show. It is perfect. And if you don't, fuck you.
But he's especially... Well, Peter, you might be the first person on this planet that has ever shut me up for this long. Good old Heraclitus, I tell you, that wild and crazy guy.
If I came to you and I gave you $10,000 for 20% of the company,
deal. Yeah. So, is that a verbal?
Younger than us, sorry to say, Joseph.
What, younger than 20?
Joe, we're just trying to help you because clearly you've lost control of the conversation.
You know what? With all due respect, I never had control of the situation. Doesn't mean I'm gone. What doesn't kill me makes you stronger.
Look at you! You are insane.
How did I do that?
You're insane.
Well, welcome to another episode of It's Not TV, It's HPO. I love it. Hope, positivity, and optimism. The most beautiful part of this, and I will, I just have to tell you, it's amazing. It's amazing because the manifestation of wanting to be on television, of wanting to be on HBO or, I don't know, Prime or CNBC or Cheddar or Bloomberg, yada, yada, yada. I was told to put it out into the universe, to put it out into the ether. That's not ether as in Ethereum or Ethernet, or it is just put it out there and not be afraid to actually birth an idea, the secret, make it happen, etc., etc. And then, my mom started calling. She was my biggest fan, my most regular viewer. She passed away a couple months ago, and she started talking about HPO. She would refer to hope, positivity, and optimism as HPO. And so now I have my tagline for the show. It's not TV, it's HPO. And whether it lands on HBO or somewhere else, it's just amazing that a little piece of her stays with me and stays with the show, hopefully forevermore, as will Matt Thieleman. He'll be staying with me forevermore. He is, whether he knows it or not, has become my coach. He might be like, I don't want to be your coach. Too bad. He's just written a book, and we're going to talk to him shortly as well. But the archive, the long tail, the content, all of that will live on, plus ideas. Ideas have the power of being able to live on forever, especially if you internalize them and if you take them with you. I have to tell you that, in fact, the seated soliloquy today is just very promptly and aptly called coach. Maybe a different type of coach. But coming into March of 2020, when I started the show, there were certain things I'd never heard of before. And I'm not afraid or embarrassed to tell you, I'd never heard of the term mastermind, believe it or not. I'd never heard of manifest or manifestation. I'd never heard of imposter syndrome or trauma dumping. And when it came to the idea of coaching and mentoring, I probably associated it more with what you see on the screen compared to the idea of having a role model, a mentor, or a coach. I've never had one. I've never had a coach, a business coach, a life coach. I've never had a mentor. Maybe part of that comes down to the fact that my dad passed away when I was 4, and I just didn't want to burden my mom. And so I just, as the oldest, just kind of figured it out or tried to figure out myself. I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd asked for help sooner. I wish I'd been able to reach out and had someone be my Obi-Wan Kenobi, my Sherpa, guiding me along the way. And I've come to learn and appreciate the power of coaching, the power of a mentor, the power of a role model, the power of even an advisor and an advisory board. You see, the ability to give up, the ability to submit, the ability to say, I don't know all the answers, I haven't figured it out yet. In fact, I probably have no clue what I'm doing. I'm making it up as I go along. I even remember saying that when I sold my first company, it wasn't because of me, it was in spite of me as an entrepreneur. So my message to you is to not be afraid to say, I don't know the answer, I haven't figured it out, I'm clueless, I'm lost, I'm confused, and reach out and find someone, your coaching soulmate, that will take you on a journey and either accelerate your current path or maybe show you a new path and be able to allow you to realize your potential and achieve things perhaps that you didn't imagine were possible. And now, fun facts, not fun facts yet. In fact, what I really wanted to do is bring on my coach. He's not my coach. I'm just calling him my coach. I'm manifesting. I'm talking about bringing on Matt Thieleman. Now, Matt, let me tell you, I've started playing with ChatGPT to now create the 100-word bio for my guests. So let me do this. Let me bring you on straight away instead of introducing you. Hey, Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, I don't know that I'm famous enough that ChatGPT knows anything about me. We'll find out.
Should we put it to the test?
All right.
Okay, we're going to put it to the test. This is your bio as introduced by ChatGPT. And I actually said to the bot, I said, I want an introduction to Matt Thieleman, who will be a guest on a talk show. So here it is. In fact, maybe we need to, let's find some, oh, I like this one. Let's go with this one. On today's show, we have a special guest who is a successful entrepreneur, coach, and author. Matt Thieleman is the founder of Golden Bristle, a coaching and consulting firm that helps individuals and businesses reach their full potential. He is also the author of the book, This is Coaching, which provides practical insights and strategies for coaches and leaders to enhance their coaching skills. Matt has a wealth of experience in marketing, sales, and leadership, and he has helped numerous clients achieve their goals and accelerate their growth. Join us as we discuss Matt's journey, his insights on coaching and leadership, and his tips for success in business and life. What do you think?
I'd watch that show. I'm gonna have ChatGPT do all my writing for me.
I love that idea. I'd watch that show. Well, guess what? You're on the show. You are the show. You're watching the show. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good, actually.
That definitely makes nice highlights of my career in a way that I don't know if you have this, Joseph. I was a marketer before I was a coach, and I'm my own worst marketing client by a long shot. So
you
to have
are not
someone else
alone.
write for me, yeah.
I mean, I've always wondered why advertising agencies are generally so bad at advertising themselves. They should be eating their dog food. They should be living the product and demonstrating how brilliantly strategic and creative and innovative they are to put themselves on the map. And none of them really do that at all or well.
No, the last agency I worked at, we had a lot of conversations about that, and often made the argument of, like, if we're not willing to invest in it ourselves, then why would anyone pay us? Which is a good way to look straight into the mirror, but we still struggled with it a ton, and I still struggle today to write about myself. So I have my new tool, ChatGPT.
I'm telling you. And look, there are other things as well, like when we think about this idea of walking our talk, eating our dog food. One of them as well is the concept of a money-back guarantee. Don't pay if you're not satisfied. Or I cannot tell you the amount of solicitations that I've received to help grow my audience, to help grow my social media profiles, etc., PR, earned media. And all I say to all of them is, give me proof of concept, show me, provide a test, pay per performance, show me that what you do works, and I will gladly write you a blank check. And almost none of them are actually prepared to let their work product speak for itself. And I find that just to be very telling.
Yeah. Well, I'll share what I've started to do since I had the book coming out. Is I'll say I'm fully head down in the book. I'm not looking to do any LinkedIn sales. Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Wait, you wrote a book?
Yeah. And I'll say, hey, it sounds like you work with a lot of coaches. I have this new resource for them. Do you think that we could partner? And I get about a 2% response rate to that. But it's a fun way that I have to sort of turn around the sales process. And the folks who are emailing me, I don't know, what do you get, like 3-4 LinkedIn messages a week? Because I think that's what I'm up to these days.
I like that. Flip. I mean, someone I know once wrote a book called Flip the Funnel. I wonder who. But I mean, flipping the sales funnel, flipping the sales process, and the word partnership, it's such an important word. It's such a powerful word. And it says come to the table rather than just being traditional. I mean, what is traditional about the world we're living in anymore?
I immediately just thought about, so I just listened to your episode with Tom Peters before I hopped on. It was amazing, by the way.
I loved it.
And you and I have a very similar idea of the future of business is that our customers are partners. Our customers have equity or receive a benefit from participating. And I think it's the same thing, right? And it's exactly what you talked about. It's like, hey, if you help me to sell a few more books or to sign a new client, I'm happy to give you money and vice versa. So like, let's talk about how we can be collaborative, how we work together. That's how I hope business starts to move.
It should be, and it should be this idea. We talk about, I mean, who's it? Kevin Kelly's 1,000 true fans, but 1,000 true fans should also be rewarded 1,000 times, 1,000 times one, or even more. And I think that's the missing link. And business has always struggled to monetize engagement and fandom and even incentivization. It's tricky because there are disclosure issues, and it gets icky, which doesn't mean we shouldn't wade through the mud. It just means accept the fact that it is icky, but we can get through this. It's almost like, I don't know, like a Spartan race, right? We're kind of like shimming through this mud and if we like raise our head too much, we're going to get an electric shock. But that doesn't mean we give up. It means that we persevere.
Yeah, and I think this is as we kind of stay in like crypto world, a lot of new projects that have this, get referrals for passing on others, and we immediately think we think of it as a pyramid scheme. Oh, the only way that you're making money is by adding new people. And by the way, that's the only way any business continues to operate, whether or not there's a referral fee. But we have so many sort of preconditions in how we think about how business should be run that I think we don't allow ourselves to actually start in the race toward what might actually be possible.
You actually bring up this like really, really interesting point, right? That all business is an elaborate Ponzi scheme, because actually what really happens is that the only way businesses can demonstrate growth and this fake or false picture that things are good is, well, first of all, is through acquisition. They buy growth.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one is this idea, when there is so much attrition and churn, the only way they can create a semblance of normalcy is to keep on like a pig in a trough, to keep on acquiring new customers through direct marketing and pay-per-click and whatever the case may be. And so what's really happening is they keep filling water into the bucket, but the bucket is a leaky bucket. And so at best, they end up with zero sum, and they end up with this picture that everything is normal and it's anything but.
And then the businesses that win are the ones that have high retention and keep adding on new customers, right? I mean, that's like as we talk about creating shareholder value or something, that's all that Wall Street's looking for is, can you continue to increase profits? And so I got no problem with us giving the share of the proceeds to our customers and having them be our marketing agency for us.
I heard something the other day, and I'll probably get it a little bit like wrong, but this idea that says the businesses that were struggling will go out of business, or the business that were not delivering on innovation. I forget what the premise was, So the ones that were not, let's just talk about maybe investing during recessionary times. So the ones that completely pulled back, or the weak businesses and models, they go out of business. The ones that were just doing the bare minimum, those are the ones that survive. And then the ones that actually were investing and pushing forward, those are the ones that thrive. So really it comes down to this idea that, at scale, cracks become chasms. So are you already with your back against the wall, in which case you're just accelerating your demise? Or are you just kind of status quo, in which case you may survive? Or are you pushing forward, in which case you may thrive and actually destroy your competition?
And it's a scary and courageous act to be willing to invest when things aren't going great. I'm learning that about. I'm pouring money into my book launch. I had to pay you like $10 million to be on this. That's not true.
Yeah, but in crypto, so it's okay.
Yeah. And it's like, it's an act of faith, right? It's like, I can't exactly see that on the other side success is guaranteed, and I think that's courage. But I know is the thing that needs to happen in order for me to move toward the business that I want, the life that I want, the impact that I want. And it's not an easy decision to make.
From a coaching standpoint, let's talk a little bit about courage. What is courage? What is I mean, you've already defined this idea. You've already set, put this little seed, planted the seed, that it is the ability to do something in good faith, as opposed to faith, not knowing full well about a positive outcome, but at least having the faith that there might be one. So how do you define courage in business, in life?
Yeah, it's really related to that. I think about Seth Godin often says, like, the art is this might not work. And so much of leadership, of life, is like, it's actually this might not work. And it's in direct opposition or tension with the fact that we as humans want certainty. We want to know that this step I take or this money I invest is going to give me a certain amount back, if we use just straight business. And courage, I think, is to be willing to be in that uncertainty and to continue to step forward anyways. And especially look, as humans, we're often dealing with a lot of old stuff that we either inherited or learned throughout our lives. And courage is often stepping beyond that thing. So it might be like, in the past, I learned that every time I opened my heart in a relationship, people betrayed me, or they couldn't step up. Courage is being willing to open our heart in the relationship, believing that one time in the future it could be different. And because that one time in the future, it leads us to the future that we want.
I love that. Oh, that was just perfect. The idea of this one time. So it's almost like the idea of, I'll fail, I'll get rejected, I'll get rejected. But all I need is one, whether it is a soulmate, whether it is a parent for the show, whatever the case may be, just this one time, it's going to be different. And I'm aware of the fact that, we have this idea of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. But that's the other part, that's the other leap of faith, right? Which is, how do I know that I'm not being insane by just doing it one more time and trying one more time before I give up?
Yeah, well, look, that isn't to say you do it the exact same way every time, right? Because that's not that. I would agree that probably is insanity. So I think that there is a way, and again, none of this is quite easy. This is like, I can give leadership platitudes in quote form, but going out and living in the real world's that's where the rubber meets the road. I think there's a way to learn from every time before us that doesn't work, right? And so hey, I make this sort of sales offer. We'll just use a sales offer. I make my pitch this way. They say no. It hurts, right? Like, that's actually, like, I receive that emotionally. That's challenging. The courageous thing is to do it again. And the courageous thing is also, I think, to take a look at, okay, objectively, what are the parts about that didn't work? What are the things that I can tweak so that the next time I can be more set up for success? I think both of those are actually courageous acts, because look, it's also painful to look at the ways in which my approach last time did fail, Because if you're anything like me, you're going to say, well, I should have known that once I see the answer, I should have known that before. And I shouldn't have had all these failed experiments before this. I should have known beforehand. There are these voices in my head, at least. And so I think the courageous act is both to be able to change our tactics, but then also to try again.
I almost feel one of the things that I love about the show is that I always tell people what their next book is going to be called. And you're like, hey, Joe, just chill out. I haven't even launched this one. But I am going to tell you now, everyone look out wherever books are sold for Matt Thieleman's second book, which will be called Courageous Acts.
I love it. I'm going to make note of that.
I'm telling you, it really resonates with me. And I always say to people, when you've done 450 of these, things just stick out like a sore thumb when they're different and when they, and when they resonate. But courageous acts, I mean, this is a summary of what life is. Life is about being able to celebrate and amplify these acts. They're not all successful ones. In fact, maybe most of them are not. But what we learn from them allows us, as Dan Pink says, regrets how looking back moves us forward. And I think that point you made is a vital one, right? Which is, this isn't just about, kind of almost animal-like, just repeating and getting the same result. It is about tweaking it. It's about continuous learning and improvement. I guess that's the whole point of coaching, right? Continuous learning and improvement.
Yeah. In my book, I introduce a model for coaching, which is based on the GPS app on our phone. So it's 3 steps. It is 1, where do you want to go? So that's having the courage to declare and get clear on our desired outcome, on our wants out of life and out of ourselves. Step 2 is, where am I right now? And the courage in there is to get brutally honest about the reality of our current situation. And again, that honesty is both, what's the challenges I have now? What's my, if I'm in a hole, what's the nature of the hole? But also, what's the amazing part of my life right now? That's the part that, I think is also a courageous act, is to be willing to say, oh yes, there's life is also amazing right now. And then the third step, and which is people think is coaching, which I think is like the final part of coaching, and the only 20% is, what are the steps along the way? And that's exactly what you pointed to, is, what are the things that I can learn as I take each step along the way, so that I can learn to make a better step next time?
One of the things you do, and we're obviously going to spend a fair amount of time today in the hour we have together on the book, but I was intrigued by your own process and the things that are on your mind and almost the things that fuel you. And one of them was this idea of a current daily creative practice. This idea of sharing what's on your mind. And so you were very kind enough to let me into your mind. It was like a mind meld. It was like a Dr. Spock mind meld. And this is what you're publishing on Facebook on a daily basis. So let's go through a few of them. When I was a teenager, I often felt lonely, self-conscious, and afraid. My body didn't complete a lot of those emotional cycles. I pushed the feelings away instead. I was thinking, it isn't all teenagers. I was going to say, isn't it all teenagers? But there are some teenagers that are supremely confident and even overconfident. So there was nothing wrong. Maybe there was something wrong with them, not wrong with you.
Well, what's funny is, if you had seen me back then, I was the overconfident teenager. And so what I'm kind of reflecting on now is this is the side effect of that. So back then for example, I was valedictorian in my high school. I was a pretty successful athlete. I was relatively well-liked in school. And so by all sort of surface measures, I sort of had the life that you would think every teenager wanted. And underneath, a lot of that was driven by the fact that I felt self-conscious all the time. It didn't actually feel that great to have the accolades that I did, because they were sort of expected. I thought that I needed to do that. And so that made me really self-conscious. Anytime I was in public, I was looking out, kind of feeling into, how does everyone think about me right now? Am I saying the thing that has me look smart so that I can hold that part of my identity? And then the side effect of that was I often felt lonely. And actually there's a comment in that post that was like, there are many facets of lonely. What does that mean? And for me, the loneliness was, I wanted to know that I could show up as myself and actually be received lovingly by the people around me. And yeah, that was from Michelle.
I love
So
that.
that was my flavor of loneliness.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because I was actually listening to Diary of a CEO, Stephen Bartlett, and he had Simon Sinek on, and Simon was talking about loneliness and how lonely he was feeling. And I think his point of view, I'm still listening to it, was that's okay. That's okay to just say, this is where I am right now. I understand it. I recognize it. I'm wallowing in it. Through the muck. Come sit in the swamp with me. Sit in the muck with me. You don't have to solve the problem. Just be with me. And that's how he kind of interacts with his friends. But you made a very important point, which is actually the imposter syndrome, and the loneliness is coming from the people that are successful or perceived to be successful, and therefore expected to act in a certain way, as opposed to demonstrating just that little. It's almost like, to me, Matt, I think of like I'm swimming in a sea of piranhas, and all I have to do is just release one little droplet of blood and they will eat me alive.
Yeah, that's the fear I think a lot of us have. And I hope to change it. That's one of the reasons that I do what I do. And also, I think inherently something like leadership is actually inherently a game of loneliness. It's a lonely experience, because there are certain ways in which we can't. It's a disservice to the people who are working with us in our organization if we share every part of what we're thinking or being. And so there's a way in which we necessarily have to compartmentalize. And the part of the beautiful work that I get to do as a coach is that I get to create a space in which someone can show up exactly as Simon's talking about and fully be however they are. And just know that I'm not there to fix them. I'm there to support them in whatever it is they want to do next, from a place of love and challenge. But they can rest assured that blood is not, any drop of blood is not actually putting them at danger when they're with me. And I really love that gift. And part of that is because I've had to learn how to be a really good client and to allow myself to open in those spaces, because it was not available to me when I was younger.
But you know what, Matt? The problem is clients will break your heart. This is in the book. There were a few things as I was that really just jumped out at me. So I'm doing an unfair segue, but tell us about why will clients break your heart? Don't go breaking my heart. I'm going to say that to my next client.
Maybe I should make a Spotify playlist to go along with the book.
There you go. There's a nice idea. We can talk about, containers and guest houses and, pushing against and etc. But we'll get to those. But talk a little bit as we completely jump. And I will just say one thing is, I always use the word, I always used to tell people, I still do, how lonely I am or was as a public speaker. It was just me, just the same as me showing up at South by Southwest or CS, but I would arrive at all these events. And yes, I was the keynote speaker, the star of the show, but I was lonely because I saw all these families of the company that hosted me and the companies attending, and they would all swarm together and move together and have dinner together. And I would be the guest and everyone would want my time and I would stand up and speak and everyone would be adoring. But at the end of the night, I returned to my lonely place and I got on the plane the next day and there was no camaraderie. So I feel that loneliness. I felt that loneliness. And I'm sure every keynote speaker or freelance or mercenary has felt that loneliness.
Yeah, thanks for speaking to it. I think it's such the opposite of what I imagine all of those people at the organization believed your experience was like, right? We see the person on stage and we think, oh, they have everything together. They get to receive all this adoration. They're making the money. They're successful. Everyone, they have this big online presence, whatever imagination people have about it. And so I think part of the loneliness is the fear of being able to share that, right? Is like, oh, I can't actually say that because they won't get it. They'll say, oh, that's just a really like entitled problem to have. And still, it's a feeling that happens.
And so maybe the answer actually is community. The answer is for a bunch of keynote speakers to hang out together, or a bunch of consultants to hang out together, or just, just the power of community, the power of a support group or support network to be able to share when you've had a good day and a bad day. And actually that's what I do now every morning of my life in the Collective Cafe, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9, regardless of whether no one shows up or 10 people show up. Manifest on Monday, no agenda Friday, wellness Wednesday, and just come and hang out together and support one another and provide a safe, welcoming space where no one is put on the spot, and no one is ostracized, and everyone is encouraged to just be a little bit more vulnerable.
I was going to plug that for you if you didn't, so I'm glad that you did. And
no, I mean, it doesn't feel like a plug when it feels authentic, when it's, especially the fact that it's free. Those are the best plugs, aren't they?
Yeah. And I unfortunately, it's at 6 a.m. my time, and I'm mostly in bed still at 6 a.m. my time. But I hope maybe in the summer hours, I plan to drop in.
Yeah, but your hair, your hair might be in rollers, but you can still, it's audio. No one wants to see you.
Oh, that's good. Okay, good. Yeah, I'll find my hat. I'll just put it on backwards. But
it was actually hilarious because I don't think just little Matt didn't know. I don't know that Matt knew 100% it was video, and he had these, like, I don't know, he looked like an 80s pop star because he had these 3 beautiful strands that were just kind of draped down the center of his forehead. There you go. Look, hold on. Let's go full screen for that.
Yeah.
There.
I have great 80s hair, don't I?
You have and so do I, but sadly I had more great 80s hair 5 years ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago. But enough about my baldness. Let's talk about boldness. How's that for another segue?
Yeah. Well, I didn't actually talk about what clients will break your heart, but like, I'm happy to
Well, we'll get back to the book,
okay.
But I want to actually also just send some flowers your way, because you're marketing this book quite brilliantly, and I ended up getting, I don't know, I was reached out to. I mean, if you think about it, everything about the process, said someone was going to ask me for my seed phrase, and tell me that I've inherited $100 million in Nigeria. But what happened is it was a DM, and the DM pulled me into a WhatsApp group, and I was intrigued, and then I was like, I think this is a scam, and then I left, and then I was like, wait a second, and then I contacted you through LinkedIn, and you said, actually, Joe, I've been following you for a while, for like a while, and then I came back in. And what you've done, tell everyone about what you've actually done, because I think it's actually a fantastic model for authors in the future.
Oh, thank you. And all the credit goes to my launch team. So my team has this idea as part of a book launch strategy that when we launch on Amazon, since I'm self-publishing, we want to funnel everyone into buying the book on launch day, April 4th. And the idea there is that Amazon will give us, more credit towards bestseller status, and that will help to provide a ton of momentum for us. And they looked at my collective sort of network. So I've been active on social. When Joe, when I got in touch with you, it was back in your Cran days, and I was leading social media for marketing for an organization. And so anyone who was in that world and on Twitter, I was like, how are they winning Twitter? But my team looked at my whole collective group and said, they're all everywhere. We don't have a network to pull them to get them to take collective action. Let's go to WhatsApp. And so we have collectively moved now, I think almost 100 people, individual invites through DMs, people who are already in my network, where I'm keeping folks updated on the launch process. So as I have a new podcast interview like this, I'll share with the group. You did that for me today. As a new update comes out, I'll share it with the group. When I got my, I don't have an advanced copy on my desk. I always have it on my desk. I took it downstairs to make notes. But when I have an advanced copy, I took pictures and I shared it. And we're sort of moving everyone
There you
toward.
go.
There we go. It's so fun to have in my hand. My fiance made this she took a bunch of really artistic photos across our house when I got it. We're getting everyone really involved in creating having the experience of the book beforehand so they can write a review and buy on launch day. And so everyone in the group, the private group, got a digital version of the book, both in PDF and EPUB, so that people can read it, they can ask questions, they can write reviews. I love that you love it. And what is hilarious to me is that, so not only did I DM you on Twitter, or my team did, but then because I wasn't that active on Twitter for a minute, my account was suspended. Like 2 days after we started those. So my team was sending DMs. I was getting the really good responses.
Yeah, that was at that point I knew it was a scam.
Yeah. So your LinkedIn message was like, this is really sketchy. Like, what's going on? So the story is they also told me to follow a few people. So I go to follow these people, and then I hit follow like on the 3rd, and I get this message like, your account has been permanently suspended. And I was like, oh, that's hilarious. Not very great. But this also came in within the hour that my team said, hey, by the way, Barack Obama follows you on Twitter. And my head like exploded because they said, you should send him a personal DM. And then I lost all of my words. I didn't know what to do at all.
Well, listen, if you can get Barack Obama to come on this show, I will change the name of the show to Matt Thieleman is Famous. How about that? And I'll be your host.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, listen, I know Scott Monty, my friend Scott Monty, was very proud about the fact that Donald Trump blocked him on Twitter. Now you know that Barack Obama is following you. So, that's why the show is called Joseph Jaffe's Not Famous, because I have famous people on the show like you.
Yeah.
And Barack.
And we'll manifest it.
I'm manifesting inside and outside at the moment.
Yeah.
The other thing that I love about this this approach is that what you're doing is every time you're doing an interview, you are debriefing and talking about the interview, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, and oftentimes the person who interviewed you is on WhatsApp and on the thread. Maybe they're not. But what you start to do is, and I don't want to necessarily even say play into ego, but at the same time, I'm looking forward to hearing what you liked about today and what you didn't. Hopefully you liked everything. And so what it does is it's good for me too. It's good for my own soul and good for my own journey and my own learning to be a part of this mini community. And I don't even know if you've connected a few of the dots that I'm connecting on the other side, but now suddenly there might be other people on this that I start to network with, that invite me on their show, that I invite on my show. And who knows, maybe one even works for HBO. So that's the other thing, is you've created community within community, and it feels very joyous to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. My greatest hope, anytime I ever bring people together, is that they can create something magical through that connection. I mean, that is if that happens, I would be more than overjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just comes back to opening yourself to the universe, right? And instead of just saying no, it's almost like your immediate gut response should be yes, and then figure it out, as opposed to no, but it's yes and
yes, yeah,
yes and
yeah, yes and what do I need in order to really be a yes, right? How do I empower that? That's what I'm learning. I'm having a lot of people who want to collaborate, and I want to be a yes, and I want to be very clear, and this is what I need in order to collaborate. This is what would be good.
Something else that you said, which was interesting, is this idea of spiritual contemplation, and just this idea of accepting everything in your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly, as holy. And I'll let you kind of expand on that. Is holy religious holy? Is holy as in their gaps that need to be sewn together, like, or is this idea of holy as in divine, as in something that transcends the mundane and becomes more spiritual by definition?
Yeah, my invitation is for anyone to insert their own word for God or the thing that connects us all. My belief is that there is an eternal energy that unites all of us. We could call it God, we could call it love, we could call it uh, the universe, we could call it spirit. Insert that for you. And so when I take that view of there is this thing that connects all of us, that necessarily created all of us and is all of us, and then therefore anything that arises from that must be a part of that. There's nothing outside of it. So it's a sort of non-dualistic thinking. And what I notice is that as humans, we want to create dualism all the time. It's just part of who we are. This is good, this is bad, this is in, this is out, this is we and them, etc. And so that manifests in things that, like, really, I think, well-intentioned. Something like, like, not to blow up the Ryan Halliday, ego is the enemy. It's a beautiful name of a book. And so one of the other things I wrote is the ego is holy. And so my current inquiry is, how can I view everything, even the parts that I don't want to look at, as just as holy and divine or connected to this bigger thing as the parts that I really love. So that's my current spiritual practice. It's a way that I helps me in reframing life generally. And so, even this book launch process has been a bit like a Spartan race that you described, or like, I feel like I'm mucking through the mud. Everyone talks about how hard the writing process is. The writing process was pretty easeful for me.
Mm-hmm.
The launch process has been something quite different. And so on the days when I forget that I'm simply in a Spartan race and I'm in the mud, and the goal is to move through it, but also to grow along, it helps me if I can get big and say, oh yeah, even the mud and the electric shock are part of this bigger experience. That helps me keep moving forward with a spirit of HPO, if you will.
I love it. And it is accepting your warts and your flaws and recognizing that without them, you are not you. You are just not you. You're a version of you. You're maybe that perfected version of you that is subject to all that insecurity that we discussed at the beginning. And so it is it's the perfectly imperfect or the imperfectly perfect that we need to embrace. And I think you articulated that really well.
Thank you. It's the, like, if I were more confident or I didn't have self-doubt, I would do the thing. Like the very practical version saying, oh, doing the thing simply requires self-doubt. Like, self-doubt is just part of the process. It's like, I can't bake a cake without, I actually don't bake cakes. Eggs, probably flour. I can't bake a cake without eggs and flour. This is not like, oh, I could bake a cake if it didn't require that. No, it simply is a part of the process. And I think it's a really practical way. It can be really challenging, but to say, like, oh, doing this next thing simply requires whatever this feeling is or whatever this thing that I get to overcome, rather than, if I didn't have this, everything would be a lot easier.
You could almost say that self-doubt actually tells you it's a litmus test that you're on the right path. It's a spidey sense. It's kind of part of the gut. It is what keeps you humble. It is something that tells you you're very much human. It's the same concept of, if you're not nervous to go on stage and deliver a keynote, something's wrong, or you run the risk and the danger of being just maybe that one time a little too big for your boots, a little too overconfident, and disaster can strike.
Yeah, then you get big feelings instead of a little bit of self-doubt or nervousness, right? Then you get the big breakdown.
Right, and you don't want that. You don't want to have that Jerry Maguire moment. Now, someone who did, who I'm sure has had many big feelings and self-doubt, maybe a lot of self-doubt, is I normally find a quote for my guests, but this is the quote that opens up the entire book. And I'll read it, and then I'll tell you who said it. If you're thinking Tony Robbins, you might be a little mistaken. Do not only practice your art, but force your way into its secrets. She deserves that, for only art and knowledge can raise man to the divine. And that was Ludwig van Beethoven. I think he's got a podcast. He's in the creator economy as a creator coin.
He's definitely on Spotify.
Exactly. Why did you start the book with this quote?
I learned coaching not through a traditional coaching certification program. I learned coaching through a program that I ended up teaching after a couple of years or co-leading called the Samurai Coaching Dojo. And so when you imagine a dojo or samurai, deliberate practice on the mat, moving and tussling and fighting is a big part of that. And so that's how I learned to coach. The way that the training was designed was that we would coach in real time with people watching in the background and receive real-time feedback on our work. And that has informed who I am as a coach. A lot of the lessons I've learned, they've come through this sort of on the mat. I also reference Teddy Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena" quote in my book. This idea of being in it, having dirt on your face. I think that when I heard that quote by Beethoven, it really reminded me of this idea of being in the practice of it. And so just as a human, one of my favorite things to do with any practice or discipline is to take a look at it in real time and break down what is happening in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. What is this person feeling? What is this person thinking? What are the choices here available to the coach or to the client, and how do they navigate that situation in these sort of micro moments? And it just it landed with me. I'm like, yeah, what we're doing here is really practicing. And lastly, this idea of raising art and knowledge to the divine, I think is, for me, I call coaching a spiritual practice. To me, it's connecting with the deepest part of ourselves and inviting something new to happen. And so anytime I can be reminded that we're moving toward the divine, I feel feelings. I feel good feelings then.
You've got the feels. There was an episode of Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, and I'm just like, oh man, I was hoping to very, very subtly find the actor who I just suddenly, who's the actor that plays Ant-Man? Why have I just forgotten his name?
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd. There you go. Sorry, Paul. Paul, Paul and I, we go back. I don't know if you know that, but Paul and I are like this. That's Paul and that's me. Anyway, it's like a dad joke. So he's on Between Two Ferns, and Zach says to him, are you a practicing Jew? And he says, no. He says, I perfected it. So the idea of being, of practicing, I like that, you practice what you preach and whatever. And this idea says, hey, just be all in, just immerse yourself and just submit and succumb, and be an artist. And I've always viewed myself as an artist before anything. Even when I look back on the show, why is the show not grown quicker than I wanted to? Because I'm an artist. Because I'm trying to focus on being a host and the content, as opposed to figuring out how I can maximize the views. And maybe I die a struggling artist too. I'm okay with that. There are many struggling artists that made it after their death. I'd prefer not to make it too dark. But for me, I think to be a content creator, to be a creator, you really do have to be an artist and look at it as art as opposed to science.
Is there anything you're looking at or focusing on right now as an artist, as a host?
Well, I'm trying to get Elon Musk to come on the show to meet Elon Ma. He's a Chinese, maybe deepfake impersonator. But no, I mean, honestly, the goal is to reinvent the talk show in the streaming era, in this new world. What I used to say is, if Johnny Carson, WWCD, what would Carson do if he was starting the Tonight Show today? Would there be two guests? Would there be a warmer? Would there be a band? Would there be a performer at the end? If there was a performer, could they be a coder? Could they be a hacker, a growth hacker? Why do we have to think of the performers, singers, songwriters, comedians, jugglers? etc. So I love the idea. It's like the JetBlue comes along and JetBlue says, well, why do we have to bore people into submission? Why not just give them free Wi-Fi? Why not just give them live TV? Or why do we starve our customers? Why not give them food? Enter the Blue Terror chips, and other things as well. So it seems sometimes that when we approach something new with a blue ocean approach, we can almost invent it or reinvent it from scratch. So that's kind of what I toy with on when I have my shower moments.
I'll tell you, if you bring on an entertainer who's someone just playing video games, my nephew would watch.
Well, there we go. There we go.
This could be
This is now going to be the official video gaming show to the stars. Now, Matt, I want to talk about some of those things I've shown them. There were a few things that they jumped out at me, and I just wanted you to spend maybe a minute or 2 minutes on each one of them. The first one is this idea of you are a guest house.
This is a reference to a Rumi poem that we are a guest house, and every day will be flooded by folks who may take all of our furniture and leave us with an empty house. And my interpretation is he's referring to feelings like the wholeness of life. And the invitation is to welcome them all in and treat them as guests, serve them tea, and even allow them to rummage the house. And so, reference to coaching, what this means to me is that we get to create a space for our client to show up exactly as they are in the fullness of their humanity, and to welcome all of it in, including our own stuff too, and to understand that that is part of this quest. That is a part of the Spartan Race. And part of what I assert coaching is a spiritual journey, because we get to learn to be with all of it.
And it's the loneliness as well, which is you've got your bed and breakfast, you're the innkeeper, these people come into your life and then they leave and you never see them again. And you go back to this transient, lonely existence, just meeting people as they're passing by and passing through your life.
Yeah, and I get to watch people who are in pursuit of creating a world-changing company and organization. I get to be on the phone with them, sort of living tangentially through them, vicariously through them in support, and they're doing the thing. And I'm simply a companion along the way for a little bit of time.
Is this why clients will break your heart? You see, now we came back into it.
Well, that's one reason now. It's not what I put in the book, but for sure, I will say yes. My belief is that many people get into coaching because we really seek to help others. We want others to succeed. We want others to have the lives that they want. And the reality is growth and transformation are really challenging. The reality is no one, including ourselves, is going to take the path to growth that we think that they should or we want them to necessarily. And some clients quit. Some clients never create the transformation that they say that they want or that we want to support them in. And so naturally, because we care, because we're humans, because we have hearts, when that stuff doesn't happen, we feel disappointment, we feel heartbreak, we feel sadness. And being willing, again, if we talk about like being the guest house, being willing to feel all of that is actually a requirement for us to show up fully as coaches. If we can't open our heart in that way, we can't really serve.
See, I was thinking that you were referring to them not paying their bills or paying on time. So so that's the beauty of a talk track. Okay, all right. There are 10,000 people in front of me. Stop, go on as well. Maybe what we need to be doing then is putting these moments and experiences into containers. I'll stop that now, but talk a little bit about containers.
The best way to do it is to give an example, to talk right now about this container. So you and I are on your talk show. I don't know why I use air quotes. I'm Gary Vee now. Everything's in air quotes.
Yeah.
You and I are on your talk show.
At least you didn't call it a podcast, in which case I would just end it right now. But yes, thank you for recognizing this is a talk show and not a talk show.
It's a talk show. My hands are down. So part of this container is what happened before we got here, which is that how did I set up the appointment with you, or how did I book this time? What you read at least part of my book, at least the headlines beforehand. You sent me some questions beforehand to get to know me a bit as a human. All of that is setting up the container. So the container is essentially like, what is the space, the energetic, emotional, and sometimes physical, or in this case, technological space in which we are communicating. And so there are like sort of infinite number of possibilities there. But what I'm speaking to is simply like, what is the space in which the conversation, the session, the work takes place? And in coaching, that is, how often do we meet and talk? What is the topic of our conversations? What are all the logistical things that happen? What are the agreements we make? I think the agreements are arguably the most important part of a container, which is these are the implicit and explicit rules that we're going to play by, that we say that we're going to play by, and is how we're going to show up energetically with each other. So sometimes that, showing up on time, but is also how are we going to hold the space. An example of an agreement is anything is possible. Or an example of an agreement is that the client provides the power in the relationship, not the coach. All of those are container, in addition to how much money and when are you going to pay me? And what happens is, I think about containers as like what we store stuff in. So I have little containers that are plant holders for my plants. I have a container that holds the pickles in my refrigerator. I have a container. I use the example in the book about brewing beer. Each of these containers has different specifications, and each of those containers also creates different sorts of transformation or growth. If I put the plant inside of a sealed container, it would die. If I put beer inside of an open container, it wouldn't ferment. And so the key to having a successful coaching engagement, I think, in successful growth is knowing what sort of container is needed for what we're trying to do here. And so, and for coaches, it's really important to be able to feel into that and to co-create that with our client based on what they want. A way to think about it is also maybe like a training regimen. If I'm running a marathon versus a half marathon versus a 5K, my training regimen is going to look entirely different.
I like it. I was actually thinking this is almost like a relationship prenup.
Nice.
And if you stay within these parameters and these frameworks, you're going to be fine. And it probably, relationships break down when those terms and conditions are not met and are contravened. Communities as well, when trust is betrayed, but there are certain rules that are implicit and explicit. They're customized, they're personalized, and they're very personal. So I love the concept of containers. I want to ask you about just two more aspects, and what I love about it is there are about 100 of these. The way that you've kind of broken down the chapters, etc. And so not only are we not giving the plot away, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. This idea of we need something or sometimes someone to push against. I've had many conversations, even very recently, about this idea that everyone needs an enemy. Everyone needs this idea, like, what are you running towards? What are you running from? Sometimes in order to know where we're going, we have to know where we're not going or where we've come from or where we don't want to go back to again. So I'd love for you to just talk, 60 seconds on this, and then we will, they talk about hook and hold. We'll bring this home with this idea of hooked.
Cool. This idea that we need something to push against is in contrast to the idea of like, don't set goals because blah, 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 set intentions or something instead. I don't necessarily, I understand the energy of it, but I don't necessarily agree. My belief is that when we set a goal or a target, what that reveals to us is the steps required in order to get there. It necessitates growth. If we think back to the Spartan Race is challenging on purpose because it wants to produce a certain outcome for us. So when we think about, if the idea is that coaching is for transformation and growth, then we need to be clear on what that growth and transformation is for. Where are we going with it? And what is winning that outcome? So the way that I think about it is in order to be able to stand up or grow, we need something to push against. If we're just saying like, I'm going to show up and allow the universe to guide me, there's nothing there to push against. So we can't grow. And so therefore our muscles can't grow. It's like if I stopped walking for a week or two, my legs would atrophy really quickly. And so consistently setting goals, whether massive or small, forces us to grow to reach those. And I think that is just part of what it means to be a human. We're here to grow. It's just why we were born.
And I suppose in doing that, these idea of these targets or these metrics, I don't want to use something as crass as the idea of a KPI, but ultimately it's both qualitative and quantitative. It must be quantitative, is what you're saying, is you have the ability then to reflect and say, why didn't I hit that goal? Why am I off course? And I think often what we don't do is have those tough conversations, being able to really, really, again, get into the mud, into the muck, and be honest about shortcomings and even failure.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing is, and I think this is one of our, if we move towards this is one of our aspirations as humans, is we get to remove our identity from the outcome. Most of us, me included, we attach our identity or our worth to the outcome. If I hit my goals, then I'm good. If I didn't hit my goals, then I'm bad. When we can say, I'm committed to my goals and I'm committed to learning in the process, we get to learn to remove our own worth as a human from the outcome and simply look at, okay, I want to get here. This thing happened. How was I being? What was I doing that had it not work? And how can I change? And then all we do is say, oh, that's just the stuff that needs to change to get there. That's it.
I think that's probably it in terms of, if you want to know what Hooked is about, you're just going to have to read the book. There was so much. I told you there were going to be, you've watched the show, so you know kind of what to expect. You were probably thinking, and in fact, you even saw the slide earlier, you're probably thinking, wait a second, what about the fun facts? What did he possibly find out about me? And I just wish there was time to talk about your Slovenian experience. There's no time to talk about meeting the prime minister or walking the dog. There's just no time to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and or the fact that you're getting married. And ultimately, in fact, June 24th, which is my son's birthday, I'm assuming that there's going to be a Dungeon and Dragons cake. There are a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
So no time to talk about that, unfortunately. No time even to talk about infinite banking, which I had to go and look up. This sounds very interesting. I wonder what that looks like in a world of crypto or not, but it definitely speaks and rings true to the concept of shared ownership, shared rewards. No time for that, except to be able to say this is just the beginning of a beautiful friendship and a beautiful conversation. And if you want to have that relationship and that conversation and sign that prenup with Matt Thieleman, the best way to start is to buy the book. In fact, he will sign it. It may not be the prenup, but certainly he may autograph the book for you. The book is called This is Coaching: How to Transform a Client's Performance, Life, and Business as a Master Coach and Warrior of Love. Please check out his company, Golden Bristle. Connect with him on LinkedIn, discourse with him in Discord. In fact, he will most likely be coming into our Discord and hanging out with the community at some point in the near future, once you've read the book, bought the t-shirt, ate the pie, and watched this episode. And of course, you can follow him on Instagram and the Twitter. Matt, it's been a real pleasure. I can't wait for the debrief on WhatsApp, but I'm still going to keep you for another 30 seconds because you just have to tell me what a warrior of love is.
I knew you were going to ask that. My fiance's boss asked that this week. This goes back to the idea that we are here for something bigger. We are connected to something bigger. And warriors of love, I believe, are committed to living into that purpose. The way that I would define God is love. And warriors of love are committed toward adding more love to the world, to fulfilling their purpose. And the warriorship comes back to what we talked about earlier, about courage, about the willingness to show up when it's hard, and the also the willingness to be in the practice of that, even when it's scary and it might not work. That's warriorship to me.
I love it. I am a warrior of love. Moshe Engelberg, who was on the show, wrote a book called The Amari Effect. Tim Sanders wrote Love is the Killer App. Love will save the day. And I'll tell you who else is a warrior of love. Well, you've watched the show, so you know it's definitely Chuck Norris.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back soon. Take care, everybody, and go buy This Is Coaching.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.